The narrative is, oh, that's the bad Russian beer, he will attack us. But in case it was a fake, fake, and now they have to de-intoxicate themselves, which is always difficult. They built a narrative since 10 years now, describing and presenting Russia as a global threat, as a vital threat, existential threat against them. But in fact, that's not true. In fact, there were no problem with Ukraine until the Maidan revolution in 2014. So, and Russia did not invade any European countries. There were some tensions locally, let's say, because of some Russian nationality minorities in Transnistria or Ossetia, but it was, let's say, localized. It was not global, and it was frozen, all this conflict. The problem came with the NATO, when NATO decided to expand and to expand in the Eastern Europe, despite the promises given to President Gorbachev in 1991. That was the main problem. But the Europeans didn't speak about that. They didn't, they present NATO as a peaceful military organization. It's an oxymoron. If you are military, it was a military alliance, which became offensive, not defensive. Remember, NATO attacked Serbia in 1999, and they bombed the Chinese embassy there in Belgrade. It was also the case in Libya. So in Iraq, Afghanistan, there were NATO battalions there. So that was, in fact, the problem. But they presented that as, a response to a non-existing a supposed Russian threat, which was not the case. Now, that's another difficulty for the European, because in my view, they are self-intoxicated by their own propaganda. The narrative is, oh, that's the bad Russian beer, he will attack us. But in case it was a fake, fake, and now they have to de-intoxicate themselves, which is always difficult in my view. There is the problem in Ukraine. That's clear. And
you have just mentioned a very interesting. You have mentioned an interesting case, the NATO, because the NATO was created in response to the Soviet Union, but the Warsaw Pact was dissolved, where NATO still expands eastward. So, why is that the case? So, who created? You're suggesting that NATO is the one created Russophobia, propaganda that Russia is the big threat. But what was the strategic aim of that? Why Europe shouldn't follow this American strategic aim?
Yeah, after the collapse of USSR in 91, normally, yes, the Warsaw Pact was dismantled, and normally NATO should also disappear. It was discussed at the time. But what happened? They maintained NATO, and after that, let's say the neoconservative elites in Washington, they took the grip and they decided, oh, we won the Cold War, United States won the Cold War, and now we should be able to be the only hegemonic power in the world. China was rising, but not at the first place at the time. And so USSR disappeared. They were alone. And this is the main reason why they kept NATO in standby in the first time, and after that developing and also expanding to the, if you read the Brzezinski, Zbigniew Brzezinski book, the Great Chessboard, written in 95, or the Paul Wolfowitz doctrine in 92. He was the assistant defense minister of United States, Paul Wolfowitz. all these guys developed theories saying if we wish to be the dominating power in the world, we should we cannot have rivals. We should destroy any rival. So we had to be sure that USSR or Russia will never come back at the first place. And that's why it's written in the book, you know, we should dismantle Ukraine. We should take the grip on Ukraine because Ukraine is the pivot country for Russian power. So if we can split Ukraine and Russia, Russia will never come back on the first place in the world. That was written. And that's why they keep NATO. That's why they expand NATO. That's why they after they propose, as I said, Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO. That was a plan, let's say like that.
Yes.
If you look back, if you take the movie from the beginning. And now it's the end of this Russia with this intervention in Ukraine. It stops this, let's say, Western NATO expansions. And now the New Deal is coming on the scene. And as I said, with the new axis of the world. But it will take time for everybody understands the new condition.
Yes. Because looking back at it, it feels a little bit tragic because...
That's tragic.
That's tragic because when you talk about playing the chess game, who is the player? The only player is the US. Where Europe is the chessboard. Europe is a piece of chessboard. It's just a piece of geographical feature in which the chess player plays, and that's tragic.
They are accustomed to play chess with the black and the white pawns, you know, and Europe were just pawns on the chessboard.
Yes. So now the world is moving to a more balanced game between multiple poles.
Exactly, but it's very hard to the previous, let's say, leaders to accept.
Generations of leaders, yes.